If you're like me and you cannot wait to see Russell Wilson help the Broncos snap their 13-game losing streak to the team in Kansas City, then go ahead and like today's video, because a little piece of trivia for you, the last time the Broncos beat the Chiefs, Peyton Manning was under center, and you got to go all the way back to 2015. I want to see that streak end. I'd like to see a weekend in week 1. So go ahead and like today's video if you think Russ is the guy that's going to do it. Welcome into today's Broncos breakdown. We're going to look at some top free agent and draft targets for Russell Wilson, and then we'll wrap up the show by an interesting rumor that came across my newsfeed of maybe some interest in Chandler Jones. But I think the most important thing for the Broncos right now is to improve the offensive line. I am 100% in the camp of do whatever it takes to make Russ happy in year 1. I'll wipe his ass if I have to. I really don't care at this point. I just want to see Russell Wilson succeed early with the Broncos and honestly just start kicking ass from day 1. So let's look at Operation Protect Russ. Pro Football Focus, which does, I think, a good job of ranking the trenches in football, ranked the Broncos' offensive line at 19th in 2021. So not the worst out there, but you're in the back half. They gave up 28 sacks, which was tied for 27th in the NFL. However, they only have one player not returning to their starting lineup at the front 5, and that's Bobby Massey on the right side. Everyone else is still under contract, so you won't see a huge shakeup, in my opinion, at the offensive line. We look at the depth chart here. Nothing's going to happen to Bowles. The only thing I could ever see happening to him is maybe they move him to right tackle if they were to sign a bigger free agent. Reisner, I think, staying put, but he'll have competition with Quinn Miners. You got Cushenberry. He's going to stay put most likely. Glasgow, he's on a big contract. They're not going to get out of that, in my opinion. But they do have to replace the right side of the offensive line. I don't think Massey's coming back, and Anderson and Fleming are also free agents. So let's first look at free agent targets for the Broncos to see where they can look to maybe sign someone off the street with NFL free agency unofficially starting on Monday. That's when they can kind of do some tampering, and officially starting on Wednesday. So here are my top 5 tackles in free agency for the Broncos. I got Trent Brown, I'm putting their age in there because that's important to note when it comes to signing some of these guys. And Terron Armstead, they're kind of head and shoulders above the rest of the group. Morgan Moses had a good year for the Jets. I think he surprised a lot of people given his age too. Eric Fisher, I was talking about a former first overall pick for the Chiefs, but after the ruptured Achilles and maybe a bit of a rebound in Indianapolis, he could get a shot and maybe go back to the AFC West. And then Germain Ifedi, he is done in Chicago. What's interesting about Ifedi is he was a former first-round pick for the Seahawks and didn't do a good job of protecting Russ back then. So I don't know if Russell Wilson is dying to get his old offensive line back that didn't do a stand-up job when they had the opportunity in Seattle. So let's take a deeper look at the 2 top guys on the market. Trent Brown is a top right tackle, and Terron Armstead is a top left tackle. He's also just the overall top tackle in free agency, but you got Garrett Bowles, who has been your starting left tackle since he was drafted out of Utah day 1. And so when we compare them, Pro Football Focus ranks, they're pretty comparable. Armstead's got a bit of a leg up, but he's also had issues with staying on the field. I've said it before. The best ability is availability. And you kind of get that more with Trent Brown, although he was not that available when he was in Vegas, or I guess at the time Oakland too. Not one of the better offensive line signings for the Raiders, but it was good for us back then at least. So that gives you at least a rough comparison, because it's not easy to compare offensive linemen. They don't have stats, but they're pretty comparable. The big difference is Brown's a right tackle. Armstead is a better tackle, but he plays on the left side of the offensive line. I think the Broncos are likely going to go and draft someone at the end of round 2 with the Rams pick, because believe it or not, after that big trade for Russell Wilson, they still have a pick in rounds 2 and 3, and then maybe look to sign a cheaper guy like Morgan Moses or someone maybe a little bit down towards the end of their career, and let the rookie second-round pick and the veteran who's not getting paid $12 million that the Broncos may not have after they extend Russell Wilson, which should be happening soon if it hasn't already by the time you're watching this. So I think a combination of that seems the most likely play for GM George Paton, who, praying to you, George. My firstborn son's named after you after that trade. Grade the offensive line, though. Go back to 2021. What would you give it? Don't be too harsh, but let it loose in the comment section. A, B, C, D, or F. This was one of the biggest talking points, I'll say, across Broncos country this offseason was how can we improve the offensive line? Well, I don't think you're going to reshuffle it very much. You got a lot of pieces coming back still under contract, but let me hear your letter grades down below. Russell Wilson absolutely wants to be up on his feet a little bit more. Last season, he ranked 13th in the NFL, giving up 30 or being sacked 33 times despite missing a couple games. 2020, he was in third in the NFL with 47 sacks. 2019, tied for first. 2018, tied for third. 2017, fourth. So basically, he's always been a top 5 sack guy in the NFL. And I'm not saying that's all in the offensive line. There's going to be some blame that can be spread around a little bit because Russell Wilson does have a tendency to hold on to the football a little bit longer, try and extend plays, and that comes at a price. But I think one of the biggest issues Wilson had in Seattle down the stretch were all the sacks. He was tired of Seattle not doing a good enough job over a long period of time. I mean, you can go from 2017 to 2020, that 4-year stretch, they did not improve the offensive line for him. They made attempts, but they were losing attempts, so I think that's one of the biggest reasons why Russ left Seattle. Let's not make the same mistake in round 2 in Denver. Next up, let's look at some targets in the NFL draft because, like I said, the Broncos, they still have a bunch of picks. They still got the Rams' second and third round pick at the tail end of round 2 and round 3, so they can devote those picks to improving the offensive line. Before we look at those picks in just a second, I want to give you guys a quick update. I made a pitch to everyone who watched our last video saying, if you subscribe, I'll include your name on a letter I am sending to George Paton to thank him for pulling off this blockbuster trade. Well, we've already got over 100 names on that letter, so if you want to be on another letter, subscribe to this video, and it'll be on a letter welcoming Russell Wilson to Mile High. Honestly, this letter's going to be so long, it's going to make the Declaration of Independence, which had 57 signatures, look like a sticky note. So keep on subscribing, and we're going to keep sending good vibes over to Mile High. Hit that big red button, and let's make the United States Postal Service work harder than they ever have before. Next up, offensive tackle free agent draft targets. So these are a list of names that I think could be there in rounds 2 and into round 3. I don't have Evan Neal. I don't got Ikuanu out of NC State, Tyler Linderbaum, some of the bigger names that are not going to slip out of the first round. But maybe some of these guys will be available at the end of round 2. The biggest one, in my opinion, and literally and figuratively, is the Australian who went to Minnesota, Daniel Faalele. He is a boulder of a human being. Actually, he makes boulders look small. We look at his notes here. He weighed in at 384 pounds at the NFL Combine last week and measured at a very skyscraper-tall 6'8". To put that into perspective, since 2003, that's the heaviest anyone has ever weighed at the NFL Combine. That's how far back the records go, by the way. I would like to argue it's probably the heaviest it's ever been in football history. This is not an easy person to move around and go, oh, excuse me, let me just squeeze by you. That's not going to happen with him. Another great pro for him is he knows the right tackle spot pretty well. He started 31 games at Minnesota at the right tackle position, so you don't have to reteach him teach an old dog a new trick of, hey, we know you played left tackle all throughout college. Now we need to move to the right side because we already got Bowles on the left side. This would be the steal of the draft, in my opinion. It's difficult to predict who's going to go where when it comes to some of these second-tier offensive linemen outside the top 5. Some mock drafts have him going in the last pick in the first round. Some have him going early third round. It's difficult to say. He does have a couple issues. When you're that big of a guy, you're not going to move the most nimble, maybe not the quickest guy out there, but at 6'8", 6'9", I'll take my chances. I absolutely would take my chances. So I think that could be the steal of the draft. Now, with that all being said, who do you think is the top sleeper in the upcoming NFL draft? It's easy to say the top prospect, but let me know who's a deep sleeper, and I'll check him out. So put his name down in the comment section below, and we'll go back and forth and see if we can come up to a couple good lists of sleepers to keep an eye on for, because Broncos mock drafts, they don't have a 9th overall pick anymore, but way better than having to pick Malik Willis when you can go get Russell Wilson. We've got more news and rumors coming your way, but if you guys have not subscribed to the channel already, I ask you to do so for a couple great reasons. One, we have free videos all year long here at the channel. We give you the latest Broncos news and rumors. We keep it light, we don't read too into things, we don't take it too seriously. If you're looking for some button-up Big J podcast or YouTube channel, this is not for you, but I think we like it that way. And probably best of all, you can be a part of the show. We have mailbag videos where you can have an opportunity to get on the show. We give shout-outs, frequent commenters club. We do a ton of great stuff, and we always invite you to join the party by commenting away. So make sure you subscribe if you have not already. The latest rumor coming out of Denver is there may be some interest in Chandler Jones. That's right, the Pro Bowl and one of the best defensive ends and edge rushers in the last decade or so is on the market. And if Von Miller decides, you know what, the Rams are giving me a boatload of money, I want to see if I can run it back. You know, I'm not going to be mad at Von Miller for that. He's already done so much for the franchise. But if that's a situation, I think Chandler Jones is a very important and key name, and intriguing name to look at. Now, he is entering his 11th season, so he's a little bit towards the end of his career, no doubt about it. But honestly, if you can get 2-3 more years out of this guy, I think it'd be worth it, especially when you look at what he did this past season. I mean, he got off to a great start. If you remember week 1 when the Titans had Ryan Tannehill get sacked 5 times, that was Chandler Jones. He's the guy that did that. He ended the season with 11 sacks altogether and 6 forced fumbles to go along with it. So Jones still motoring himself to a very high level even in year 10. Now, I want you guys to pick a defensive end for me. Chandler Jones or Von Miller. Type their jersey number down below for me. Jones 55, Von Miller's not number 40 in my eyes. He's number 58. He always will be. So 55 for Jones or 58 for Von Miller. Sound off in the comment section below. If Von Miller decides, you know what, I want to stay in L.A., I'm sorry, Broncos country, not a bad consolation prize, in my opinion, to end up with Chandler Jones. He's been one of the best defensive ends. A couple years ago, he led the NFL in sacks. He had 17 one season. So this is a top-tier guy right now that maybe, according to some, could be the best defensive end on the market. You have a nice little debate about that one. But at the end, if you end up with Chandler Jones, I wouldn't be crying too much about missing out on Von Miller. He can still help produce in a lot of ways. All right, that's going to do it for us here at the Broncos Breakdown. We'll catch up with you guys later. But until then, go Broncos.